Guys, welcome to the first ever edition of the Cover One Bills podcast. We're bringing this Cover One team back, talking about the Bills. I'm your host tonight, Aaron Quinn, and the guy that needs no introduction, as all Bills fans know, my co-host here, Nate Geary. How you doing tonight, Nate?
I'm doing well. I just got done eating, and which is nice that on the radio I can't really say that I was just at Chef's eating delicious chefs, indulging delicious chefs, but now I can do that because we don't have
we're going to send them a bill
sponsors. Right. We don't have to worry about corporate sponsors. But yeah, no, I'm doing well this week. It's been a long week, but the last couple weeks running into the draft are always the longest. So.
Yeah, it's an awesome time. I'm glad we're launching right now, too. Give us a couple weeks here to talk about the draft stuff. If people follow Cover One, we've been talking about it as far as our content goes, putting it out there. We're happy to have Nate back here in the fold doing some breakdowns with Eric. So go check that stuff out at cover1.net. And if you don't know, before we get into it tonight, we are up on iTunes already. So go ahead and like, subscribe, follow, give us those nice reviews over on iTunes because we're going to be bringing you guys weekly content. Eric couldn't be with us tonight, but he's going to be jumping in here when we can pull him out of the film room from time to time and get him in here with our chat and stuff. Since we're running a little late tonight, let's get right into the show here. Let's talk about first kind of a blindsided news this week. I thought we were just going to be talking about quarterbacks and finding the franchise guy, but Richie Incognito, some confusing news early in the day that day of whether or not he was retiring or leveraging. Looks like he is retiring. What are your thoughts on that, man? What's going on with Richie? And
that one, it hurt actually because Richie's it's my favorite player.
Yeah.
First and foremost, the emotional side of it, the fan side of it is it sucks because you like Richie Incognito. He's a fun guy to cheer for. Very vocal in the community, does a lot of stuff with the community. Everybody really likes Richie Incognito. I think there has been a sense that he's really, really reformed himself since kind of his sketchy past. And actually, I really kind of, I guess I understood where a lot of people's, criticism of this move from him come. Like, he should have done this a couple of months ago or right after the season, or at least give this team time to find his replacement before all the good free agents are, dried up, which is a totally good point. And, I also think there is a sense, and I kind of agreed with Sale on this, is there's a little sense, at least to me anyways, that it does seem like maybe he's forgotten that the Bills were the only team that really kind of gave him an opportunity. And I understand, him having to take a pay cut. He says it's not anything to do with it. It has something to do with it.
Right.
So I don't know. It's one of those situations where he's a very likable player inside, outside the locker room. Big loss. I think maybe the bigger loss on the field, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, and I kind of hear what you're saying, what Sal's saying a little bit there too. I try to pull my fan hat off a little bit and remember that teams don't hesitate to cut guys and cut them when it's a tough time to find a team. And it's a business at the end of the day. And if it is really about health, I've seen a lot of fans making comments to Richie on Twitter, and I think, I get the fan side of it, but people need to give the guy some space a little bit and allow him. If it is a health issue, that comes first. There's a long life for these guys after the game, and if he's got to get his health right, I get it. Go do your thing, man. Definitely hurts. He's a guy that I have his jersey. Big Richie fan. I love watching him slam guys into the ground. So I'm going to miss
playing the game at a pretty remarkably high level for his age too.
Absolutely, and he loves playing it when he's out there. And I think he's given his all to the Bills in this city. So I've got nothing against him for taking what he has to do to go do that. I think the thing that I'm interested in now is the ripple effect, right? There's people talking how it's maybe affects the draft plans, which I don't see that as much as he's a great player, and I think it's an important position with interior rushing affecting quarterbacks. Now, I don't see it affecting the draft plan, right? This is a plan that they've had in place for over a year now. Is Richie's leaving really impacted that much?
I don't think it's impacted anybody inside the organization. I don't think it really makes them even blink an eye. Here's the thing. You mentioned it. The plan has really always been the reason they made those trades, the reason you move on from a guy like – and honestly, I go back to last year too. I'm surprised they didn't go for more compensatory picks because they had the opportunity to by cutting a couple guys to get another pick or add another pick. But the reason that they made the trades they did, trading Cordy Glenn and moving up in the first round, and obviously trading that pick last year and getting another first round pick this year, it was all in the culmination of eventually the end goal was to this year draft a quarterback. And now it sort of seems like people are getting cold feet. People are saying, well, there's too many holes now. We have to fill this roster. We have to do this. We have to fill a guard. We have to, and I understand all those points. And there is a argument to be made that you don't build a team by having a crappy team and a great quarterback, or a young quarterback that you're growing to be a franchise quarterback. But the argument can be made equally the same on the other side. So we sit at sort of a crossroads, I think, as a fan base. I don't think the organization, though, is at a crossroads. I think they're very focused on finding and evaluating who the next quarterback is going to be. I believe, I don't have insider information on this, I have a gut feeling. I have a feeling that their intention is to get to the number 2 pick, and they're going to do whatever it takes to get there. And I do have this other gut feeling, and I know you're not going to like it, and we'll have plenty of time to talk about this in further episodes too, is I think it's for Josh Allen. I think that they like Josh Allen. I think they like what he has raw ability-wise. I've grown to like him a little bit more, but it doesn't matter who the quarterback is in this draft. If they feel that Josh Allen's the best quarterback in this draft and they trade up to number 2 to go get him, I'm going to have trust in it until I'm proven. This regime, in my opinion, hasn't given me, you, or anybody a real reason to not trust them. So right. I think this is the ultimate test of trust.
Yeah, absolutely. As far as the Richie effects go on the roster, I don't know that I think I posed this question in the Cover One Slack chat earlier too, that is there really, people have talked about not just Richie, but Cordy leaving, Eric Wood leaving, and now Richie leaving as a, combined loss on the offensive line. Obviously, Cordy didn't play last year, so I'm not really concerned about that. I thought Dawkins did fine. I'm expecting growth in his second year. Eric Wood, as much as I love the guy on the field, off the field as a leader and all he's done for the community, I'm not really sure that I thought he was a good player. I think his play slid over the past 2 to 3 seasons. Obviously, he was injured. So I don't see that as a significant loss in the way maybe a lot of fans do. And while Richie's a loss, he wasn't going to be here more than a year anyway. So get a young guy the reps. I think John Miller maybe is going to be able to step in and get some reps now. So I don't even know that there's that significant of a drop off, with Groy and Miller in those positions. Obviously there is a drop off, but how deep is that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, would they like to be in a situation where they could take the best guard in this draft, Quentin Nelson? I think they would love that. I think a lot of teams would love that. The idea that they're now focused on or trying to maybe not move up all the way for a quarterback, but to take a guard or to take a lineman in the first round and maybe stay put. I don't think that Richie Incognito, a one-year player like you mentioned, has any sort of weight or bearing on what it is this team, this organization has set out to do all the way last year when Brandon Beane took over. And even before that, when the groundwork was laid by Sean McDermott and at the time Doug Whaley. So an offensive lineman, although I don't want to make it sound like I'm minimizing the position or the player or the impact of the player, but what I am doing is minimizing it in the context that this organization has, from the start, decided quarterback first, then we'll build the rest out. Richie Incognito can be replaced. If it's not this year, it'll be next year when the team has nearly $80 million in cap space available. They don't have that this year. They can't go out and pay the best guard. They didn't. He went to, where did he end up going? The kid from Norwell, right? Where did he end up going?
Yeah,
he went somewhere, but somebody paying him a ridiculous amount of money. That'll be the Bills next year, but the Bills weren't in a position to do that this year. Richie hurts them because I think he was a good bridge player in the middle and a good veteran. But again, this is an interior offensive lineman. I don't want to say they're a dime a dozen because they're not, but at the same time, they have replacement level players currently on the roster that can fill in place. But it's my concern now goes, if one of those players gets hurt, the drop-off you're getting now from a guy like Bodine, Groy, or Miller or Ducasse to whatever is underneath them would be where I'm concerned. That's where I'd be concerned.
There's some guys out there in free agency. We don't have to get into that tonight. I've always thought, though, that even I agree with you that the draft has always been about quarterback, and the mission is still quarterback. This is a team that front office that's laser-focused. They were laser-focused throughout free agency. They didn't come off their spots on the things that they were wanting and the values that they associated to them. So I think they're taking that approach into the draft. They're not going to be swayed. But I think part of the draft plan has always been to try to address some of either the depth of offensive line or get some guys in there for the offensive line, whether that's in later rounds or whatever it is. I think they will address it throughout the draft.
Yeah, and the other thing I worry about too is how many picks is it going to take you to get to number 2, and is it going to take you 6?
I heard 6.
I heard 6 today as well by Ian Kenyon, and I wasn't super thrilled about that. That's not going to be all 6 picks. But what I think you're seeing is probably a combination of 1 or 2 picks next year. Do they have to move that first round pick next year? Because if they do, man, it starts to get really, really cost. Where it's just very, very high in cost for me, because I think with the roster they have, and if they are going to trade up, they're not going to have a ton of ability to fill a lot of holes this year. Right. I said this last year, and I was snake bitten by it, but they've taken a step back talent-wise from last year's roster. So I don't know. I'll be interested to see. Good coaching got them through last year, I think, at times. Can it get this roster over the hump? I don't know. But I think that, like we talked about, this has really been the sole focus of this organization. And losing Richie Incognito, although, like we said, very productive, especially at his age, losing him, he wasn't a guy that was a Deion Dawkins. You lose a Deion Dawkins, then you're talking about, holy cow, what are we going to do? You know what I'm saying? This loss, because of the long-term or lack of long-term ramifications, I think this is a move that it sucks in the interim, but I think we'll be fine in the long run.
Absolutely. Yeah, no. And like I said earlier, he's a 1-year guy. So the impact isn't as deep as maybe the emotional feeling of it is right now. Yep. So kind of along the lines of the thing you were talking about here, let's get into that. Cause rumors were circulating around Twitter. It's been rumors that have been flown around for the last 2 months about the Gettleman Bean connection and a trade being worked out over the last few months. And somebody had stated, Eric did a post about it over at cover1.net. You can check out, but that there was, people that they're talking to, I think was the quote, people have been talking to have said that a trade is in place. Whether or not it happens is yet to be seen, but the trade's in place, and somebody was hearing that it could possibly be 6 picks, and then people are also connecting, Josh Allen to that number 2 spot. So are you buying this rumor? I mean, I think that they have talked to everybody in the top 10 and have a plethora of different trade scenarios in place. Is this one more significant?
I would say so. It's the most expensive. It's the most, I think, potential for your boom, but you also leave yourself available for the bust potential. Sure. But I still think you have the bust potential anywhere you stand. I think once you get to number 2 and you're talking about taking the second best, in your opinion, it has to be the second best player in this draft. And to me, it can't be the second best quarterback. You have to have, if you're Brandon Beane, if you're Sean McDermott, and you're trading up to number 2, whether it's for Sam Darnold, Josh Allen, Josh Rosen, or Baker Mayfield, they have to believe that guy is either the best or the second best guy available in the draft. I'm not interested in them trading 6 picks for the second best quarterback. He needs to be the second best player in this draft. And I think if they can identify that player, whether that's Josh Allen, I'm not sure. I know, and they were talking about it in ESPN. Schefter was talking about how one GM said he really loved Baker Mayfield. He's the far and away number 1 quarterback in this draft. It's uncontested. Then the next guy said he'd never draft that blanking jerk or whatever it was, and it's just like, okay, that's how it is it's like 50-50 down the middle for all these quarterbacks. All of them, some GMs are going to say, this guy's a franchise quarterback. Others are going to say, I'm not touching him. And it's all going to be about philosophy and what you value. And I think what we know, at least what Brandon Beane has said he's valued, is arm strength, things that he can't teach. And Josh Allen really kind of fits the bill on that. But there's been talk that 2 weeks ago, AQ, what were we talking about? We were talking about how much they liked Baker Mayfield. And Jeremy was saying his source says that Mayfield's the guy they're going after. And then before that, it was, Gelko says Rosen. And then before that, it was Albright says Allen. So, there is this sort of circus that goes around in the next few weeks here, the next coming days. We get down to 10 days. Some of the things you're going to start to hear there's going to be tangible things you'll hear, things that are real. And I think that's what we have to wait for. I think last year you started to hear the rumblings that Chicago was really in on Trubisky, that Chicago really likes Trubisky. They might try to make a play up. They might try to do something. They only had to move up 1 pick. But I think the same thing's going to go for. I think we're going to get an idea of who the Browns want, and that's going to really set the domino effect. I said this really from the start. If Josh Allen goes 1, I think that has very, very bad ramifications for the Bills. But maybe not for Bills fans.
Maybe not for Bills fans. Here's my thing with the information coming out about who the Bills want. It started around the Senior Bowl that they're high on, not really my guy, but my guy Rudolph, that they're high on him. And so it's really gone through those whole top 5 to 6 quarterbacks. We've heard they like all of them. I have a tough time with we don't have a lot of history on this front office and this regime, but I have a tough time thinking that leaks of the biggest decision that this team has been, set forth to make, that information is getting out to the public in any way with any legitimacy. So I just have a hard time thinking that they're that high on any one guy, that they're just gushing over him in league meetings and letting that stuff out. These guys just seem too close to the vest for that information to get out there. So that's why I'm a little skeptical over when I hear, the Bills are all in on X quarterback, because we've seen signings come out of, the Bills are announcing signings. That's never happened before. It's always been leaked. Right. What do you make of that? Is it, we're in the lying season. So should we buy too much on that they love Josh Allen, or do you think it's really a fit for what Bean has said he's looking for?
Well, I think the latter you just said about Bean and sort of what he says he covets, but I think until he's really proven wrong, I mean, my buddy Ben Albright really kind of has been spot on in a lot of not only this year's draft process, but last year's and over the summer, and sort of where a lot of guys were going to end up falling in free agency. He was really on top of it. And really from the start, he's maintained the Bills' interest in Josh Allen. And, a couple weeks ago, some guy who was working for the Bills supposedly posted a picture of the conference room that just so happened to have the top 5 quarterbacks ranked on the dry erase board. Which
I didn't see that.
You didn't see that?
I missed that
man,
one.
yeah. Some guy, and then he tweeted out a picture. So some guy was in a bar with 2 other Bills fans, and he supposedly had a Bills badge and showed him this picture and sent him this picture. And then they took a picture with the guy with his Bills badge. That guy's fired for sure.
Yeah.
For sure, that guy's fired. But that's neither here nor there. Although, and I will say, Josh Allen was number 1. He was the top quarterback on that guy's whiteboard list. But yeah, I'd also have a hard time, Aaron. I think you're totally right. I have a hard time believing that anything you hear about the Bills has any sort of weight. I think what we've seen throughout since Brandon Beane took over, even before that, before McDermott, it's a tight ship. You don't hear anything getting leaked. You don't hear about it. You didn't hear about anything really to do about Eric Wood until it happened. You know what I'm saying? Like, you don't hear about stuff that's in the news anymore until the team wants it released. So you're right. I would say the latter is true there, that based on what we know of what Brandon Beane covets at the quarterback position, that big, strong arm quarterback. I mean, that's Josh Allen. And Josh, what they'd be hoping for is Josh Allen's arm strength can overcome some of the other shortcomings of his game.
Yeah, maybe they can hide that in the offense a little bit too with his athleticism. I don't know.
He does. He gives me a little, and it's not because he's a small school guy that I'm thinking. He does have a little bit of Wentz in him. That's really what it reminds. He does a little bit, although he didn't have sort of the success at the college level that Carson Wentz did. I just think when I see them play, when I see them throw the football and how they manufacture drives, those two, they have a lot of similarities to me.
Here's my concern there, and we'll get into diving into these QBs a little bit more here in this next segment, but here's my biggest concern when you say that is my concern is that people are looking for the next wins and that they may
no doubt about it.
Force that. And that's what I'm worried about, because sometimes these GMs and scouts, as great as they are at their jobs, they're looking for that next diamond in the rough, that guy that's going to be – I mean, everybody wants Carson Wentz now, right? So that's my concern there with the small school guy and that comparison. But speaking of whiteboards, rankings, all that stuff, give it to me. What is your Nate Geary's top 5 quarterbacks? You can go from 1 to 5, 5 to 1. I don't care. Just give it to me in order. Where are you at? Not the Bills. Where's yours at?
So I'm going to pull it up right now. I did my rankings. And last year I did them on cover1.net. I feel like I should probably put this together after I reveal it now. I might as well put my list together, right? Yeah. So I guess we'll go from 5. And I think you're going to like this. This has changed for me over the past few weeks. But I'm putting Mason Rudolph as my QB5.
All right. I'm glad you have infected your brain.
You did a little bit. And not only that, but a lot of the things that I've started to learn and read about him off the field remind me, and this is, Bills centric. I'm looking at this from the Bills point of view in terms of who I would look for in terms of fit and everything that we know about what the Bills want. So QB5, Mason Rudolph, that's where I'm thinking that goes right now. QB4, I've got Josh Allen. Some people might think that's too high. Some people might think that's too low, that he's the best quarterback or the second best quarterback. Right? That's where I sort of sit on him. QB3, Sam Darnold, another guy who you might say, he's probably QB1. He looked really good in his pro day, everything else like that. I agree. He has maybe more than anybody, maybe outside Allen, has the highest ceiling potential. He's got a ton of untapped potential. His hitch scares the hell out of me. It scares the absolute daylights out of me. And I don't know that he can fix his turnover problem in the pros. So those are two things that really that knock back Darnold. I think, though, in terms of talent, he's right there with Josh Rosen as the most talented pure passers in this draft. QB2, Baker Mayfield. I really, part of me wants to put him at QB1, but I just think in terms of my QB1, Josh Rosen is by far the purest passer in this draft, the purest passer since Andrew Luck to come in. A guy that manipulates defenses with his brain, with his eyes, with his motions before, like he does things outside of just throwing a really beautiful ball. He has played with a terrible offense. Really no good NFL talent around him to speak of. Defensively, they ranked last year 117th in the nation against in points per game. Over 36 points per game their defense gave up last year. So he's playing a ton from behind. He was asked to do a hell of a lot more than I think he was supposed to be, especially early on his freshman year. Gets hurt his sophomore year. Josh Rosen's my QB1. Baker Mayfield's my QB2. I would, in a perfect world, if the Bills could figure out a way to land either one of those players, I feel really, really good about it. But that's kind of where my top five. And I would maybe say my QB5 is Rudolph and Jackson. I think they're right there. Jackson, obviously, it brings something that none of these quarterbacks bring, and that's that lightning rod ability. But that's kind of where I sit with my top five.
Actually, man, ours are pretty close. If you had asked me today, I've switched a little bit to where I was, a couple months ago. I'll go same thing, 5-1 here with you. I got Rudolph at 5. I've had him at 5 for a little while here, and I've got Lamar Jackson right there. I have those guys really closely graded in my mind. They're kind of tied at 4A, 4B for me, those two, and then I'm the same. 3 through 1. I got Darnold, Mayfield, and Rosen as well. And so I was surprised to hear you say that because I think a lot of people thought I was a little crazy for putting Mayfield ahead. I just think Mayfield's got that extra intangible, which he's got all the stats. PFF has him rated as one of the best guys out there, but he's also got the extra intangible level. You heard Hugh Jackson talking about, guys just want to follow him. I just don't know that I see that in Darnold. I think he's trying to portray that here throughout his process and, going out to throw for guys. I don't know that it's authentic or not. With Baker Mayfield, it's super authentic.
Yeah.
He is who he is. And it could go wrong.
Baker Mayfield's one of those guys that doesn't have to do that.
Yeah.
He naturally draws people to him.
Right.
And I think if you're talking about veterans, and that's the one thing is you worry about your quarterback going into a locker room and demanding the respect of veterans right away. I think Baker Mayfield walks in that, and he's got the respect of those veterans just because they know what he's about. Here's the thing, too, with Mayfield. I do believe there's a portion of GMs in this league who think he's the best top number one quarterback in this draft. I think most years, if he wasn't 5'11", 6 feet, if he was 6'2", 6'3", he'd be the number one quarterback in this draft. There's no question. His stats are off the charts. The thing that I love about Baker Mayfield the most, which you can check out a piece that I'll have up on Friday at WGR550.com, is the platforms that he throws off. He reminds me a lot of Matthew Stafford without being as big or as strong-armed as Matthew Stafford. But the way that he throws kind of like he's facing forward and throws sidearm, just – the ways and the angles and the platforms that he's able to manipulate, that to me make him one of those top guys. Darnold, there's a lot to say about Darnold. I did my podcast, Intentional Scouting, at WGR, and I forget who I had on. It's going to bother me. Maybe it was it Joe Moreno? Maybe it was Joe Moreno, or maybe it was like Connor Rogers, but I had somebody do Darnold and basically said maybe it was Ledyard. I think it was Ledyard. Ledyard told me he's like his QB4.
Mm-hmm.
Like he just felt I don't want to quote Ledyard if it wasn't Ledyard, but it was one of those guys we had, and we were all sort of in agreement where I kind of went into that podcast thinking he's QB1, and I left thinking he's kind of QB4.
Right.
So you just don't. But how many of these guys can you cycle through and say the exact same thing about? It's this year is. I think there is a lot of talent there, but there's a lot of drawbacks, and it's about which team finds the guy with the highest ceiling that can convert it.
Yeah, and somebody said earlier when we were talking about QBs, when we were talking about Richie, that I'm scrolling up to the chat. I don't see it, but that all the QBs in this class have flaws, and I agree with that 100%. Yep. Even Rosen, who I'm super high on, and
there's no question he has flaws. Yeah,
he's got flaws. And he's got some concerns that I see. Nobody's a surefire thing, and that kind of back to the Giants trade and things. I know they got to get that guy, but it does start to scare me. And like you said, people are getting a little bit of cold feet. It starts to really scare me when you're starting to talk about 6 picks for a guy that has flaws, and whether or not those flaws can be corrected at the next level or masked at the next level. That's a lot of a future of this organization that you're giving up. When here's my thing, and this is kind of where I'm getting trumpeted as a guy that Rudolph's my guy. He's my 5th quarterback, but I think I'm associating value to where they got to get to get these guys, and how big is the graded separation between 1 and 5. I think between 1 and 5 it's big, but I think between 3 and 5 it's not that
big. You're getting much closer. There's no doubt about that. It's I don't know. I come to a place where I think in terms of, as long as they get one, I feel like I'm going to be happy. Yep. If they stay at 12 and they take Lamar Jackson, they stay at 12 and take Mason Rudolph. If they stay at 12 and take Roquan Smith, or what I'm saying, like they take one of these top guys. All right, like as long as they figure out a way,
Twitter will burn. But
if they find a way, I fully expect though. And I've really sort of felt this from the beginning. They're going to trade at number 2. If they could get to number 1, they do it. That's how the conviction I feel like they are working with right now and trying to do something that this franchise has had one of, a franchise quarterback, and they haven't had any other ones. And you look at some of these organizations, you look at the Colts, they go back to back. You look at the Green Bay Packers, they go back to back. The Bills haven't been able to figure it out. And I think they came in here, and I think Brandon Beane saw, how did the Carolina Panthers go from being a team that was sort of an afterthought after their Super Bowl with Steve Smith and Jake Delhomme and that great defense? They became an afterthought. They were a bad football team. Remember the Jimmy Clausen years, the Matt Moore's years? They were terrible. What turned them around was that one year they got a great quarterback at the top of the draft, and then they started building on the defense around him, and they put good players around him. And I think that he's going to use a lot of how they built Carolina with how they're going to build the Bills.
Yeah, and I'm all for it. And here's where I've been at with a lot of the fans is, even though I have Josh Allen as my 6th guy, and I particularly don't want him, the stuff that are his flaws really terrify me, and I'm not sure they get corrected at the next level. From what I've seen, I haven't been able to be convinced that they do. Where some of the other flaws that guys have, I do think can easily be corrected. I love what they put together, so I'm not reason to not trust them so far. So, and at the end of the day, I'm a fan. I'm going to buy whatever bridge of BS they sell me. You know what I mean? Like, I'm going to get excited in August and want to see what's going on. So even if it is Allen, I got to trust in their process. I mean, these are methodical guys. They have good scouts in that organization. So if they're seeing something I'm not, I mean, I'm just a fan at the end of the day. But it's hard for me to swallow right now as we're getting closer. I'm getting nervous that
everyone is
hearing these rumors about that amount of picks to go up and get a guy that I think is the 6th best. And that a lot of draft Twitter, it's not just me. The draft Twitter guys are not big on Allen. Right. So what's the disconnect between the draft Twitter guys and the pros? Because when I turn on NFL Network, they're talking them up.
It's prototypes. You try to go with guys you can get, and I always go back to this: it's qualities you can't teach, and that's where he excels and the other guys don't. Is he has arm strength he can't teach. He's got the ability to move around and throw on the run like you can't teach. Those are things that the size, obviously, that you can't teach, the hand size, things that you can do with those sort of intangibles. So that's where the disconnect is a lot of people see his low completion percentage. And I'm brought back to, I think it was Dan Orlovsky the other day was talking about for Josh Allen's completion percentage to be over 60%, he would have had to complete 26 more balls, which is a little bit over 2 per game. So, right. So if he has 2 more completions per game, if he can turn 2 of those incompletions into completions, he's a above 60% passer. And when you put it in context like that, you think, all right, well, maybe it's not that bad. Maybe there's got to be 2 plays in the game where he can take back and improve on and be better.
In his senior year, they pulled him back a little bit as far as what they let him do in the passing game, which I don't know why that was. I don't know if they were trying to protect him in his draft stock or what the reasoning was for that. Because I think if he came out in his junior year, we'd have a lot less questions.
I think I'd agree, yeah.
About him.
Yep, I agree.
To the point, though, that you're making here about the completion percentage, I don't know if this is true. I forget where I heard it. I saw somewhere that with college players' completion percentages in the first couple of years, you can expect a drop by a couple percentage points in completion percentage from the college level to the NFL. So, under 60, you start getting into, is he going to be thrown in the 55, 56 complete?
It's not where you want to be.
That is not where you want to be. Granted, I don't think the Bills are going to be very good this coming season anyway. I'm probably going to get killed for that next November.
Yeah,
I hope so. I hope people come back to me and say you're an idiot.
I take it with open arms. Last year I said they were going to be worse than the Browns, and I'm like, give it to me. Let's hear it.
Yeah, let's do it. But I would hate to see that for a rookie quarterback come in and be that low completion percentage. So I'm hoping that you're right, that if you add a couple more plays in there for him, that he can boost that up. One thing I want to talk about, and that we get so caught up in this early portion of the draft and all that, what are some of the sleeper QBs outside of your top 5, outside of the that 5-6 guys that you think I have a feeling that there's going to be a guy, whether it's 5 and beyond, that is going to be competing for one of the best quarterbacks in this class. I don't know which one it is, but I think when all the dust settles in a few years, we're going to be like, man, everyone was so high on these 6 and they totally missed X quarterback. So what are some of your sleepers?
I really like Kyle Oleta, and he's not very far outside of that top 5 either. He doesn't really have that elite arm strength. I don't even really think he's got good arm strength. Like it is capable arm strength. It's Nate Peterman territory. But he is such a nuanced passer. I loved what I saw from him on film. He's going to be a darling. He's going to go higher than I think a lot of people suspect. I know in the mock draft I did. We did a live mock draft for Rochester Sports Network, and he went in the first round to the Saints. That's not totally out of the ballpark, to be honest with you. I don't think so. I think especially if there's a run on quarterbacks early, that there might be a quarterback not a lot of people have been talking about might get sifted into the first round, especially if, let's say, Mason Rudolph goes by 12, by 13, and then all of a sudden there's a team that moves up to get Lamar Jackson at 20. At the end of that first round, I don't know. A team might feel scared off that they have to take a quarterback if they really want one. Yeah. So Loletta is a guy that I really like. Riley Ferguson, the quarterback from Memphis, is another guy that I like. Sort of one of those guys that I think really spreads the ball around well. Not a huge body of work, but a player that, I don't know, this draft is going to have a gem or two in it. And it's going to be a later guy that we're not talking about. The kid from, Central Florida. His name's escaping me at the moment.
Or Florida International.
Florida International, is that it? Yeah, Florida International.
I think there's the name.
Yeah, you're right. It's Florida International. It's not Central. Yeah. But there's going to be a gem in this draft. I think if you're looking at one, if I was going to put my money on a guy that's outside the top 5, it's Kyle Oleta for sure.
Yeah, I think round 1's a little aggressive. I do think there's going to be a little bit of a run on quarterbacks in the start of this draft. I think some of the teams that they're talking about as prospects for trading up or things like that are taking a quarterback. I think a lot of that's smokescreen. I think there's too much talent in this draft in the first round for these teams all have needs for them to jump on a guy like that early. But I do think Loleta, I haven't seen a lot of them, but I think, with time, if he gets in the right type of situation, sits behind a good quarterback for a year or two, could come into the league and be, a good backup at the least, and maybe even more than that with accuracy that he presents. So I don't doubt that you're right there. So we talked about some of the draft QBs, the chat room's firing off a little bit. Guys, if you have questions for us, we're going to be taking some questions here at the end. We have some loaded up from earlier this week. But while we're on the topic of quarterbacks, you and Eric took a look at AJ McCarron in the film room. So, guys, if you haven't gotten to check that out, go to the Cover One YouTube page, go to the film room, check that breakdown out. I just watched it again today while I was cleaning up around the house. It's great stuff because I think regardless who they draft, I think McCarron's going to get a chance to start this season. And so Bills fans want to go check that out. So what did you guys learn? Tell us a little bit about A.J. McCarron as you were breaking him down.
Ballsy, and willing are the two words that I sort of used when I walked away from that film review. He stands in there. He'll take a hit and deliver football. Doesn't have elite arm strength. Another guy that I think he's got a little bit better arm strength than Nathan Peterman does. But his game is based around timing. I think he'll work well with Brian Dable. Obviously, they're both Alabama guys, so they're going to probably hit it off right off the bat, anyways. Yeah. But I learned some things about him. I'm not high on him. But I think for the price tag, what you're getting for the price tag is a bargain, considering that Sam Bradford got $20 million. I feel much better about a $5 million A.J. McCarron than I do about a $20 million Sam Bradford. So I can say that for sure. But his deep ball is nice. The problem is the Bills don't have a deep ball guy. Yeah. Can he throw the back shoulder throw? I think he's shown some evidence that he can do that. So I think him and Kelvin Benjamin will have a good relationship to start the season at least.
Yeah, I've seen him throw to guys that aren't open, which is something that fans were not happy with.
They'll be welcome to see.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that he could be in that middle tier starting quarterbacks in the league. I think that's a ceiling, right? Ceiling for him is middle, mediocre starting quarterback in this league, which I'm fine with for a year if needed. And if, say it's Josh Allen or whoever is a legitimate quarterback, comes in and takes the job, I'm fine with them keeping AJ as a backup. I think that's a great position to be in, and that we would love to have that for this team. So again, if you guys haven't gotten to check that out, definitely go in to the Cover One YouTube page and check that out, because I thought I liked A.J. McCarron a little bit more when the rumors and free agency were coming out that we were looking at him. I wasn't really interested in it, but after watching you guys review, I pumped the brakes a little bit, and I think the Peterman comparisons a little bit are nice. That he's a veteran Peterman, which is what I wanted. I didn't want Peterman to get thrown into the spotlight. I think he needed the time, and I do still think Peterman can be a really good backup and have a long career as a solid backup in this league, which is not a bad thing, guys. Like that. I
say it all the time.
Look how much money Chase Daniels made doing that.
I know. It's people think all the time that when you say a guy is the ceiling or could be a really good long-term backup, that it's a bad thing. I mean, there's places in the league for people like that. It's not, you're not backup punter, they have roster spots for those guys, and Nick Foles shows how valuable it is to have when you have a good one who's the backup. So I don't know. It's okay to be a backup in this league, and it's not disrespectful or whatever people want to say it is when you label a guy based on what he's done to think that he could be a good backup and maybe not a good starter in this league, especially when you talk about a guy that don't have great arm strength. A.J. McCarron's probably that guy. He's probably a long-term backup, but he's going to get an opportunity to start, and I think he's earned it, at least to this point.
Yeah, and he is a competitor, and he's won at every level up into the NFL. So I'm
had
all
a great
for it.
Season his junior year, I think it was, where he threw 30 touchdowns, 3 picks, I think. So, he had a pretty darn good season, too.
Yeah, absolutely. And I did hear that Jerry Hughes talked to Andy Dalton, former college teammates, and Andy told them that, this kid has the potential to be special. So that's encouraging to hear too. So not banking on it happening, but, that would be a really nice, pleasant surprise if we had 2 good quarterbacks.
I wouldn't be mad. It'd be a nice change from the normal, that's for sure.
Absolutely. So before we wrap this up tonight, again, to some of the questions that we got during the week. So just so you guys know, we are going to be doing the shows weekly, so if you have questions throughout the week, hit us up. We'll get them into the show when we can. We want to get fan interaction, so there's a couple questions coming in through the chat box. I'll get to those too. So let's start with Jeremy Stokesbury, who is a premium member here with Cover One, and we'll get into that a little bit too, because Eric's got a great deal running on the premium membership. But we'll wrap that up before we get out of here. But his question for the podcast: how will the offense look this year? Shady is still there, so it'll be run heavy, but I hope to expect to be better than 31st passing. I also expect McCarron to be a better starter, and if the defense takes a step forward, are we looking at another playoff berth? Go ahead and you take that one, man.
I think the defense should take a step forward. I need to see who's playing Mike and Will, but I think for the most part they should. Sam. It's going to be Mike and Sam. Will's going to be Milano, but I don't know. I'm going to have a hard time putting together this team's going to take a step forward. They might, and again, we might have to eat our words, but as far as what I'm thinking what their offense is going to look like, Man, it's kind of hard to tell because we don't exactly know what Dable wants to implement. I think what you're going to see a lot of is a lot of 21 personnel. I don't think you're going to see a lot of 11. They just don't have right now. They don't have the ability to go 10 and 11. They just don't have the wide receiver personnel. They don't have the player types. That could change after the draft,
right?
After, before training camp comes. But as of right now, I see them being a team that is going to run the ball a lot.
Yeah, I totally agree. As far as the
far more power concepts too, by the way, far more power, less zone.
Another possible benefit for with Richie leaving, for John Miller to be able to step in and get back into playing at a level that he was a couple of years ago, which would be a nice surprise as well.
Yes.
For the Bills. But as far as playoff berth, I posted a question on my Twitter the other day about what are your expectations for this team? Because the way I saw people reacting to the holes on the roster, like saying, like freaking out that we haven't gotten a wide receiver, freaking out about middle linebacker. I wanted to know really what is everybody's expectations of this team? Because for me, it's not playoffs. Yeah. They, as good as they were at times last year, they backed into the playoffs in the most bizarre way that I could see, and we were lucky to be there, and now I'm happy that drought is off our back. But even if they're as good as they were a year ago, I don't think that's good enough to get back to the playoffs again.
I agree. But AFC's bad, but
AFC is bad. Anything's possible. They could back into the playoffs again, but I don't think they got any better, at least yet. There's still a lot of the roster to be filled out. So even if they meet the what they played, the level that they played last year, I'm just not sure that is going to be enough to do that 2 times in a row. I just wouldn't bank on that. Jeremy also had a follow-up question. Also, too early to consider Shaq Lawson. Is it too early to consider Shaq Lawson a bust?
No.
I get he was hurt year 1, year 2, was his new scheme. But I know you guys are film buffs. What are you seeing?
He was supposed to take the step forward this year because it was the better scheme. He said it himself. Yeah. He's a better scheme fit.
In better shape.
Yep, and better shape and everything. And he's just he's not dynamic. He doesn't have dynamic athleticism to get after the passer. There's no quick twitch. Yeah. Like you see with Jerry Hughes. Jerry Hughes is very quick twitch.
Jerry Hughes also gets so low to the ground. It's
right. He has rare ability and rare get off. He just Shaq Lawson doesn't have that. He's a very good, responsible run defender, but he is not an elite pass rusher in this league.
And do you think some of that though? So like you said, run defender. What I saw when Eric was doing breakdowns after games and everything like that, I know a lot of people were knocking Shaq, but what I saw was him keeping contained a lot. Do you think some of it was scheme, allowing Jerry to rush on one side and then making sure that Shaq just held down his spot and kept contained?
For sure.
The run defense wasn't good, but he made it better.
But on third downs, they were replacing Lawson with Lorenzo Alexander towards the end of the year.
Sure.
And when he went out and then wasn't in towards the end of the season, but they were rushing Lorenzo Alexander instead. That should tell you where they sort of feel he is in terms of a pass rusher.
Yeah. Yeah, so there you go.
But it's just he has not lived up to what everybody thought he was going to be coming out of college, that's for sure.
Yeah, no, and I know for a while people were talking about him possibly being trade bait. I don't see a trade value for him right now because even though he was drafted high, he hasn't lived up to potential yet. Maybe this year he can prove everybody
wrong.
Year
3, it's the big year. Yep,
that'd be awesome for us, right? We got Ryan Thomas at Thomas Takeover. If the Bills stay at 12th overall and do not select a quarterback at 12, who would you want them to take?
Lamar Jackson.
No, he said do not. If they're at 12, a prospect that's not a quarterback, who do you want?
Oh, okay. I thought he said they didn't trade up and they got a quarterback. That's a good question. Mike McGlinchey.
At 12? Really?
I'm okay with him there. Yeah, I'm okay with him there. I think he's your right tackle, and you've got Deion Dawkins and Michael McGlinchey. Boom. Your 2 tackles, linchpin tackles. The other guy that I really like up there.
Is that the Notre Dame homer in you a little bit?
A little bit.
All right.
I've
heard him coming up into the teens. I have. Yeah. He started out there in the 20s, maybe a round 2 guy, and I heard this week of possibilities of him being in the teens. So it's not totally crazy.
Zaire Alexander's another guy. I'd be all about that. Corner, but Mike McGlinchey, I got a special place in my heart for him. So.
And Alexander visited with the Bills. I believe.
Did. He did.
So the thing I like about him, he doesn't have a lot of he didn't have a ton of experience in college, but that dude has some of the most freakish athleticism I've seen. I love watching cornerbacks play. It's my favorite position to watch. That dude is a freak. Somebody's going to get a really nice talent there. So I don't disagree with that one. I mean, in the perfect dream scenario for me, Roquan Smith falls to 12 because people run on quarterbacks and stuff. I think he's going to be one of the best players.
I like Tremaine Edmonds too. I like Edmonds a lot.
I would take Edmonds at 12. I'm not as high on Edmonds as some people have seen are. I think there's a lot more risk there than Roquan.
I think people are taking a pass rusher, in my opinion.
No, definitely. I agree. But people are talking about him over Roquan, which if that was the case, Roquan may fall there. I know. It would be crazy.
I mean,
it'd be crazy.
Way.
Yeah. I think one of those linebackers would fall to 12 possibly, and I would take either one of them. Those would be my guys at 12. So then our other question here is from Jason at JMPPhil or JMPhil88. Am I the only one who thinks Lamar Jackson kind of screwed himself by not hiring an agent, and as a result, he'll probably go behind the QBs that he's better than? You think so?
I do. As much as I think it's an unpopular take, I think what agents do outside of just negotiating contracts, they make you available at all hours of the day to a team that wants to call and bring you in for a pro workout or for a private workout. How many teams have you heard have been doing private workouts with Lamar Jackson? Right. Almost none. Cleveland's like the only team. There's been a lot of rumors that he's been difficult to get a hold of, that he's not returning people's calls. On top of that, agents also, what they're supposed to do anyways, is kind of help you when there's other people and there's rumors going around, and they can put out good information about you, or, put out information about you that will whatever, you know what I'm saying? Like there are things that agents do outside of just negotiate contracts that he's seeing firsthand.
Yeah, I'm torn on this one a little bit because I understand his reasoning for not doing it. I think that possibly he could have hired a better PR firm, not necessarily an agent, put together a PR firm for himself, a marketing company to brand himself a little bit better, like you're saying, and help dispel some of those rumors,
right,
et cetera. The part of the question that I don't agree with here is, as a result, he will probably go behind QBs that he's better than. I haven't really been seeing him mocked behind QBs that he's better than, because I think he's right there with Rudolph. I'm seeing those top 3 to 4 guys go, and then I think he's at 4 for me, and then I'm seeing him and Rudolph there. So I don't think that an agent would have had a Lamar Jackson ahead of a Darnold, Mayfield, or Rosen. Would you agree?
Probably. Yeah. I think I agree with that. I just think what you lose sometimes, I just think there's a tendency these players are like, well, we only make, we have slotted amounts of money, so why should they get 5-10% or whatever that they're getting? But I think you look at guys and you wonder, he's a good example, and we're going to find out if more guys do this in the future. I would bet that they don't. And especially after what we saw with Richard Sherman, where it sort of seems like he didn't really fully understand the contract language, stuff like that's the stuff that you need them around for. These guys are paid to understand the contract language and what you need to fight for as a player. So I don't know. I don't think it's going to be something that becomes in vogue. That's for sure.
Gotcha. Yeah. I just don't know that it's hurting him to the point where
I don't think it's going to hurt his draft stock.
Yeah.
I just think in terms of right now, I think that he's seeing what the value of an actual agent is. I don't think it's not going to make him a second round pick. Let's put it that way. He's not going to be a second round pick. If he's supposed to go in the first round, if he's a first round grade, he's going to still go in the first round.
And at the end of the day, all this extra fluff of draft season definitely matters. I think the media pumps it up a little bit more than, they got to fill these time slots. Path to the draft's on every night. You got to have something to fill time slots. In the radio, you got to have things to talk about. At the end of the day, film doesn't lie, and there's film on Jackson, and that's what he said. Look, if you want to know my 40 time, just watch the film. Watch people try to catch me. Like those things aren't as big of a deal as I think they're being made out to be. But Game Toots TV here, who's in the chat room going, he's got a bunch of questions firing up, but some of his first ones I caught and wrote down here. I'm kind of paraphrasing his question here, but late round running back, like day 3 guy, like Penny, who's your guy to get in to this running back room, or even interested in a running back?
I mean, after Ivory, and they bring back Tywan Jones, and they bring in Aaron Green, who had some flashes before he got injured in Green Bay. Yeah, so I'll tell you what, I haven't really taken a very deep look into the running backs. I've really only been looking at linemen and quarterbacks throughout the process. I don't really know them past Kerryon Johnson is a guy that I really like. I don't know how high he's going to go. I want to say something like Daniel Jeremiah today said he could be he's good enough to be in the first round, which I think's a little crazy. But if he went on a Saturday, Kerryon Johnson could be a LaShawn McCoy type.
Okay. I haven't seen much of him. Here's my thing about these running backs is obviously you're super top heavy with Saquon Barkley. But I think, those two you're really top heavy in the draft. But I think these other guys are going to be affected by it being actually a really deep class for good plug in running back by committee type running backs. So I think teams are going to be able to put off drafting these guys a little bit because there's so many of them. Yeah, that they can put them off in the later days.
Nick Chubb's another really interesting guy. I don't know where he's going to go, but I really like his work ethic. I like what he brings. And I don't know. I wonder who's going to be the Kamara this year. Who's going to be Alvin Kamara, the guy that not a lot of people talk about, but gets to the right offense and gets in the right scheme. That'll be interesting. I think that could be Sonny Michel. I do, but this is a really loaded running back class for sure.
It really is. A guy that I would like them taking kind of in the later rounds. The question is Ballage from Arizona State, I believe it is. Okay. He just seems to me like the kind of back that you can get late in the draft that would be a nice role behind Ivory and Shady, because I thought Tywan Jones isn't a running back. He's a special teamer. This kid can also play special teams, Ballage, so that he gives you that ability to put a roster spot.
That's big for this regime too. So.
Yeah, and it's big for a guy that's going to be whatever a 4th, 5th round pick that you're going to bring in to be your third running back. He better be able to get on the field in special teams because he's not going to see the field that often. Right. But as far as the running backs that they brought in, I wouldn't mind if camp is full of running backs because behind Shady, I'm not sure what Chris Ivory brings at this point in his career. We don't know how Cadet's going to recover from his injury. We're not sure about Green. We're not sure about really anybody after Ivory. We're not really that sure about Ivory. So it's a long season. It's going to be a heavy run game team. Bring as many of these guys in so you can get a look at them in training camp, because who knows in whatever week you're calling up guys that we didn't even hear about because there's a bunch of injuries.
Happens every year. Sierra Wood.
Exactly. So bring in as many of them as you can. So I'm not opposed to them drafting a late round guy. Game Toots also asks, and this is a good question for you because you have your profile picture is 2 of you kissing Josh Rosen. So yes. Not on the lips. It's just cheek.
Just cheek.
No big deal. It's just a flirty kiss.
It's a flirty kiss. It's exactly right.
Rosen's injury history, does that scare you at all?
No.
It's often talked about.
It scares me in that he's had a few concussions. I worry about that a little bit. How many more is he going to be able to sustain? Other than that, he played with a pretty poor offensive line, and we talked about him being behind a lot. They weren't a good running team. He was sort of a sitting duck. There's a couple of sacks I saw on film on Twitter the other day where he just got absolutely just blindsided from the front side because his offensive tackle just got absolutely worked. So I'm not that worried. I think if he gets behind a better offensive line, if he comes to Buffalo, they better not play him until next year. They better not play him until there's a good offensive line in front of him. I don't want him out there getting killed.
Yeah, one thing that really bothers me about Josh Rosen is the narrative that he's not tough. Because when I watch his cut-ups, I see him get hit a lot. And like pretty hard hits. Concussions aren't a test of a man's toughness. It happens. Jim Kelly talked about playing through multiple games where he received multiple concussions in games and continued to play. Yeah. Wouldn't ever be allowed today. So we don't know if Rosen would play through that or not, but that is not a toughness thing to me. When you watch Rosen on tape, the guy's a tough guy.
I agree.
There's a few throws where I saw him duck it out. The guy's coming after him. He kind of ducks out of the way, but he took some hits, man. The guy is a tough guy. And if anything, I would say Josh Allen's injury history from high school concerns me much more than Josh Rosen's. He had like a massive shoulder injury. It was like collarbone broken in 5 spots, multiple screws put into his shoulder. That's the kind of thing that as you age, cold weather, like those are the injuries that when you wake up in the morning, that thing is hurting and it never goes away. So that is an injury that scares me much more than Rosen's. Obviously concussions only multiply and build. So that is a worry, but somebody says here, I don't want Rosen too fragile. I don't see it. I don't see that.
Neither do I.
As a fragile guy.
He had the concussions and then he had the shoulder injury in sophomore season. Right. But again, just Connor McDermott was his best offensive lineman. He's on our practice squad.
Right.
So take that for what you will.
Absolutely. So I think that's pretty much it here for questions. We're going to be back next week. So if you had any questions that I didn't get to, don't hesitate to come on back. We'll try to get to all the questions here. We want to keep the show, in the hour parameter here. So we're going to wrap up. What do you got coming for content up this week, man?
Well, I've got a lot towards the end of the week here. That's probably going to, a lot of it's probably going to get pushed to early next week. But I will have my first quarterback rankings out. If I don't get him this week, they'll be out early next week. I have a wide receiver piece that I'd like to get out tomorrow, if I can find the time tonight to finish her up. And then not only on top of that, I have my Baker Mayfield piece up at WGR. You can catch, that'll be probably up either Friday or Saturday this weekend. So I have a lot because Sale was out this week, so I was filling in for Sale, doing some website stuff. So it was a busy week, but it's once we get down to it here, every day starts to become busy and you start to wish there were more hours in the day. But a lot of stuff coming up. Obviously, where you want to be is up at cover1.net, where the team we have right now are just cranking out article after article. It's a great draft resource. If you're doing mock drafts with your buddies and you want a list of prospects, just go to cover1.net because that's all up there. They've got 40 times. They've got broad jumps. They got everything up on the website. It's completely transformed into a really legitimate website, one-stop shop for draft stuff. Not only that, but you can download the app too, which I would suggest doing. Is if you don't have it right now, I got my phone right here. All you got to do is go to the App Store, Cover One, the app, download it.
Absolutely, yeah. The team at Cover One right now is doing a ton of great stuff. We got expanding on the team all the time, bringing in new guys. Like Nate said, the draft tracker is up there. It's right on the homepage, so you can search through guys, and when you click on their names, you can get their scouting reports if they're available, things like that.
Which is awesome.
It's super awesome. A lot of scouting reports coming out, almost daily, multiple scouting reports on different guys coming out. So as we get closer to the draft, expect more of that. Whenever somebody visits with the Bills, Eric's updating that scout profile, really. I don't know how the guy does it. He's always in the film room. But he just updated Dante Jackson with the Ole Miss scheme, Florida and Ole Miss.
I'm single. I don't know how Eric does it.
Yeah. I'm not really sure either. But
I don't know. I think there's a good chance that Eric doesn't sleep.
I told him that the other day. I said, I'm pretty sure
does he sleep, do you think? I'm pretty sure he doesn't sleep.
If I had to go with the over-under, I said it's under 5 hours of sleep a day.
I'm taking the under all day. Taking the under all day.
I think so. Anyway, there's a ton of content up there, and if you are interested in premium subscription, which gets you access to all the content,
it's the goods, man.
It's really the goods, and there's a lot of the breakdowns are going over there. The quarterback breakdowns are all over there, and it's only right now he's doing it for $10 on the third tier membership. $10, you get it for the whole year, so that's throughout the season. If you know what Eric and Nate do during the season, you know that's a great deal. Right now, people are selling draft guides for $25-$30 for a few hundred pages of guys that aren't always related to the Bills. This is going to be geared towards Bills and draft, the upcoming draft the next year. So scouting reports galore. It's a great deal. I'm not sure how long Eric's running that for. So if you're interested in the premium subscription, now's the time to get over there and just pop in $10 and you got it for the year. You don't have to worry about it. So definitely worth grabbing the app because you get the notifications when we're coming out, when new content's coming out. So I'm excited to be a part of this team. I'm glad we brought this podcast back. Mm-hmm. Like I said in the opening, go find us on iTunes, wherever you find podcasts. Go ahead and subscribe. Give us a review because we're getting this thing back started again. They got the Cover One podcast that just talks about draft. We're all about the Bills, guys. We're going to be bringing you content every week and guiding you into the season. So as always, for Cover One with Nate Geary, I'm Aaron Quinn. Thanks so much for coming out, guys, and we'll see you next week.